The storm raged across the black sky, tearing through the broken lands known as the scrapfields, a place where even monsters feared to wander. The wind howled like a beast in pain, carrying the smell of rust, smoke, and death. Somewhere deep within the wrecked metal and bones, a sound broke through the storm, a faint cry, weak but alive. It was the sound of a newborn wyvern hatchling, small, trembling, and alone. Its golden scales were covered in mud, and its tiny wings shook as lightning flashed above. The hatchling did not know why it had been left there, or why the great wings of its mother, the dragon queen herself, had vanished into the clouds moments after laying it down. All it knew was pain and fear. The scrap fields were not a place for mercy. Creatures crawled through the shadows, scavengers made of metal and bone, waiting for anything to die so they could feast. And now, a helpless dragon baby lay crying, its soft voice echoing through the ruins. Far away, a man named Rowan walked through the same field, his boots crunching against the metal shards. He was a scavenger, a human survivor in a world ruled by dragons and machines. His coat was torn, his hands scarred, but his eyes were sharp, the kind that had seen too much yet still searched for something worth saving. He came here every few weeks, hoping to find something he could trade for food or fuel. But tonight was different. He heard the sound. It wasn't the growl of a beast or the creak of old metal. It was something small, something alive. Rowan stopped and listened. The cry came again, faint but desperate, as if begging the world not to forget it. He followed the sound through a twisted corridor of broken ships and burnt steel, his flashlight flickering through the smoke. And then he saw it. A tiny creature tangled in wires, its wings cut and bleeding, its eyes wide with terror. For a moment Rowan froze. A wyvern, a baby dragon. He knew what that meant. If its mother was nearby, she would kill him for even looking at her child. But the storm was empty, and the sky was silent. Rowan knelt beside the hatchling, his heart pounding. The little creature hissed weakly, trying to look fierce but failing. He could see its breath shivering in the cold air. "Easy there, little one," he whispered softly, his voice trembling. "I'm not gonna hurt you." He carefully cut the wires trapping its wings and lifted it from the ground. It was lighter than he expected, barely alive. The wyvern looked up at him, its golden eyes glowing faintly in the dark. In that moment, something strange passed between them. Fear, trust, and something else neither of them understood. Rowan wrapped the hatchling in his old jacket and started walking back to his shelter. He didn't know why he was saving it. Maybe because it was alive. Maybe because he was tired of watching everything die. Or maybe, deep inside, he had always wanted something to protect. Hours later, as the storm began to fade, the Dragon Queen landed far away on a mountain peak, her scales glowing like molten gold under the moonlight. Her expression was cold and heavy. She had done the unthinkable, left her own child behind. But the prophecy of her kind was clear. A child born under the bloodstorm would bring ruin to dragonkind. She could not risk the fate of her kingdom. Her heart trembled, but she turned away from the horizon, trying to silence the echo of her hatchling's cries in her mind. To her, the child was dead. To her, it had to be. But down in the scrap fields, that same child was breathing, sleeping against the warmth of a human chest. Rowan stayed awake all night, feeding the hatchling drops of warm water and covering it from the cold. The little creature twitched, weak but alive. In the dim light of his shelter, Rowan whispered, "You're safe now, little one. You're not alone anymore." The wyvern blinked and let out a small chirp, as if understanding him. That night, something new began. Not just survival, but a bond that neither dragon nor human had ever shared before. The next morning, as dawn touched the world with pale light, Rowan stepped outside his shelter. He looked at the horizon and felt something shift inside him. He didn't know what dangers would come, but he knew one thing. He couldn't abandon the creature now. He had found something worth fighting for. The wyvern stretched its tiny wings and let out a small growl, a spark of life in its voice. Rowan smiled and said quietly, "I guess it's just you and me now, kid." Little did he know, far above the clouds, the Dragon Queen had felt something strange too. a faint pulse, a tiny beat in the magic of the world. Her eyes opened wide. Her child was still alive. And when a dragon queen's child lives, the world burns. The sun rose weakly over the broken world, painting the scrap fields in shades of red and gold. The storm had passed, but the land still carried the scars of its rage. Smoke curled from cracks in the ground, and the air shimmered with heat. Inside a small metal hut built from old war scraps, Rowan sat near a flickering fire, watching the tiny wyvern sleep in a box lined with cloth. The creature's breathing was uneven, its wings bandaged with old cloth strips. It had survived the night barely. Rowan hadn't slept. He just watched, wondering if he had made the right choice. Saving a dragon's child was dangerous, maybe even suicidal. But when he looked at the hatchling's face, so innocent and fragile, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Days passed. The hatchling grew stronger, eating small pieces of cooked meat and learning to walk. Rowan had never cared for anything living before, not even himself. He had been a scavenger, taking what he needed to survive, trusting no one. But now he found himself talking to the little creature like it could understand him. "You're a tough one, aren't you?" he'd say while feeding it. The wyvern tilted its head, blinking its bright golden eyes. Rowan laughed softly. "Guess I'll need to give you a name." He thought for a moment, then said, "How about Ash?" The wyvern made a soft growl, almost like approval. And so, Ash became his son in all but blood. But peace never lasted long in the scrap fields. One evening, as Rowan scavenged near the outskirts, he noticed deep claw marks on the metal ruins. Marks too large for any scavenger beast. His chest tightened. Dragons. They rarely came this close to human lands, but when they did, destruction followed. He hurried back to his shelter. Ash greeted him with a happy chirp, wings fluttering. Rowan smiled but felt fear creeping in. If the dragons were searching, they would find the scent of their own kind soon. He didn't know that far above the clouds, the Dragon Queen's hunters were already tracking the faint trace of magic that connected mother and child. That night, Rowan couldn't sleep. He sat outside the hut, staring at the stars. The wyvern slept curled beside him, warm and calm. Rowan whispered, "I don't know what you are, little one, or why your mother left you. But if they come for you, they'll have to go through me first." His voice was quiet, but his eyes were firm. Deep inside, he didn't see a dragon anymore. He saw family. The next day, Ash tried to fly for the first time. He flapped his small wings hard, jumping from a pile of junk and crashing into a metal drum. Rowan laughed so hard that tears came to his eyes. "You'll get it someday, kid. Maybe sooner than I expect." Ash chirped proudly, shaking dust from his wings. Slowly, the bond between man and beast grew stronger. Ash followed Rowan everywhere, protecting him from rats and small scavenger bots. Sometimes, when Rowan was asleep, the wyvern curled up close to him, keeping him warm with his body heat. But the world outside was not kind. Word began to spread through the wastelands. A human was keeping a dragon child. Some said it was cursed. Others said it was a weapon. Mercenaries began to whisper about the scavenger with the golden wyvern. Rowan didn't care. He knew the truth. The creature wasn't a weapon. It was a life he had promised to protect. Far above, the Dragon Queen stood on her throne of molten stone, her eyes closed. Through the magic that bound her bloodline, she felt it, her child's heartbeat. It was faint but steady. She trembled, torn between joy and rage. The prophecy had warned that the child would rise with human blood beside it, bringing change to both worlds. She couldn't allow that. She summoned her generals. "Find the hatchling," she commanded, her voice cold as ice, "and burn the human who dares to touch my blood." Down below, Rowan felt an unease in his chest that night. He didn't know why, but the air felt heavier, the wind colder. Ash growled softly, looking toward the dark horizon as if sensing danger. Something was coming. As Rowan picked up his rifle and looked at the tiny wyvern by his side, he smiled faintly and whispered, "Looks like trouble's on its way, kid. But we've handled worse, haven't we?" The wyvern's golden eyes glowed in the dim light, and for a brief moment, Rowan thought he saw fire dancing behind them. Not the fire of destruction, but the fire of life. Neither of them knew that their bond would soon test the line between man and monster, love and war, and that their story was only just beginning. The wind howled across the empty plains, carrying the scent of ash and smoke. Rowan stood at the edge of the scrap fields, his eyes scanning the dark horizon. Something had changed in the air, a tension that made even the scavenger beasts hide in silence. Beside him, Ash stretched his growing wings, now strong enough to lift him a few feet off the ground. The wyvern had grown fast, stronger every day, his scales shining brighter, his eyes sharper. He was no longer the weak hatchling Rowan had rescued. But danger was approaching, danger from above. That night, the sky split open with a scream. Fire streaked through the clouds, and massive shadows descended from the stars. Rowan grabbed his rifle, his heart racing. "Ash, inside! Now!" he shouted. The wyvern growled, wings twitching with fear and anger. Then they came, the Dragon Queen's hunters. 3 of them, their black scales glistening like obsidian, their eyes burning red. They circled the scrap fields, roaring so loud the ground trembled. Rowan had seen dragons before, but never this close, never this fierce. Each one was the size of a small building, armored and deadly. From the shadows, one dragon spoke, its voice deep and echoing like thunder. "Human," it growled, "you hold what does not belong to you. The queen demands her blood returned." Rowan stepped forward, gun ready but hands shaking. "He's not a weapon," he shouted. "He's just a child." The dragon's eyes narrowed. "A child of ruin. His life threatens our kind. Step aside, and you may live." Rowan looked down at Ash, who stood beside him, growling softly. "If you want him," Rowan said, voice steady now, "you'll have to go through me." For a moment, the night went silent. Then fire exploded. The ground shattered as flames tore through the junk piles, melting metal and stone. Rowan ran, diving for cover as Ash leapt into the air, his small wings flapping wildly. He wasn't strong enough to fight, but his instincts screamed to protect. One of the dragons dived, claws slicing through the wreckage, searching for the hatchling. Rowan rolled behind a wall, firing his weapon. The bullets sparked harmlessly against the dragon's scales, but it was enough to distract it. Ash roared, a small, brave sound, and spat a weak burst of fire that hit the beast's face. It wasn't much, but it made the creature snarl in rage. Rowan shouted, "Run, Ash, run!" They ran through the broken tunnels of the scrap fields, fire lighting the night behind them. The world shook with the hunters' roars. Rowan could feel the heat on his back, could hear metal melting. But no matter how far they ran, the dragons followed, driven by the queen's command. Rowan stumbled, his lungs burning. Ash stopped beside him, nudging his arm, refusing to leave him. The wyvern's eyes glowed brighter than ever, and something strange began to happen. The ground beneath them pulsed with golden light. The air shimmered with energy, old magic, sleeping for centuries. Far away, the Dragon Queen felt it. Her eyes opened wide as she sensed her child's power awakening. "No," she whispered. "It's too soon." Her generals bowed, waiting for orders, but she could not speak. For the first time in her life, fear filled her heart. Back in the scrap fields, one hunter landed before Rowan, blocking their escape. Its wings spread wide, black smoke rising from its nostrils. "You cannot protect it," the dragon hissed. "He belongs to the sky, not to you." Rowan raised his gun again, but the dragon's tail struck him hard, sending him crashing into a metal wall. Blood filled his mouth, his vision blurred. Ash screamed, a sound so sharp it shook the air. The young wyvern stood over Rowan, trembling but unbroken. Fire danced inside his chest. He opened his mouth, and this time, real flame erupted, bright, golden, and alive. It struck the hunter straight in the face, sending it reeling back with a roar of pain. Rowan coughed, struggling to his feet. "That's it, Ash," he said weakly. "Show them who you are." The two remaining dragons hesitated, watching the glow building around the hatchling. It was pure, ancient, and powerful, something they had not seen in centuries. The light exploded outward, throwing dust and fire into the sky. The hunters screamed and retreated, vanishing into the clouds. Silence returned. The scrap fields burned around them, glowing red against the night. Rowan fell to his knees, exhausted. Ash limped toward him, pressing his head against Rowan's shoulder. Rowan smiled through the pain. "You saved me, kid," he whispered. "Guess we're even now." But far above, the Dragon Queen looked toward the horizon, her eyes burning with a mix of pride and sorrow. She knew what had awakened in her child. The power of the golden flame, a magic said to unite or destroy worlds. The prophecy had begun, and now nothing could stop it. The night after the battle was heavy with smoke and silence. The scrap fields, once filled with noise and life, now lay buried under ash and melted steel. Rowan sat beside a small fire inside the ruins of an old factory, his body bruised and bleeding. Every breath hurt, but his eyes stayed on the small wyvern resting beside him. Ash was weak, wings scorched, his golden scales dulled by soot. Yet his chest rose and fell, he was alive. Rowan smiled faintly, whispering, "You did good, kid. Real good." The wyvern made a soft sound, pressing closer, as if he understood every word. Outside, the wind howled through the twisted metal towers, and strange shadows moved in the distance. The battle hadn't gone unnoticed. The light from Ash's fire had been seen for miles. Rumors would spread. Some would come to help. Most would come to hunt. Rowan knew they couldn't stay. He packed what little food he had, wrapped Ash in a torn blanket, and began walking toward the western ridges, a place people called the Dead Peaks. It was said no dragon dared to cross them. Maybe there they could hide. The journey was slow and painful. Rowan limped with every step, leaning on a metal pipe as a cane. The land turned colder, the sky darker. Sometimes they walked for hours without a sound, just the crunch of dust beneath their feet. At night, when the stars burned bright, Rowan would look up and whisper stories, human stories, about the old world, about families, about fathers and sons. Ash would listen, blinking slowly, tail wrapped around Rowan's boots. It became their comfort, their little world of two against everything else. But even as they fled, the Dragon Queen could not find peace. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt her child's heartbeat, strong, steady, alive. The bond between mother and hatchling could not be broken by distance or choice. She stood at the edge of her volcanic palace, watching her generals return empty-handed. Her fury shook the mountain. "You failed me," she roared. The dragons bowed low, trembling. But beneath her anger was something else. Guilt. She saw flashes in her mind. Her child's eyes, the way they glowed golden before she left him. A mother's memory she had tried to bury. The queen turned away, whispering to herself, "He is alive because of that human. I must see him with my own eyes." Far from her kingdom, in the freezing winds of the Dead Peaks, Rowan and Ash built a small camp inside a cave. The walls were marked with ancient carvings, glowing faintly with runes older than both man and dragon. Rowan touched them curiously. "Looks like someone lived here a long time ago," he murmured. Ash tilted his head, sniffing the air. The cave felt strange, almost alive. The longer they stayed, the more Rowan felt the warmth returning to his body, the pain fading faster than it should. There was power here, quiet, hidden power. Days turned into weeks. Rowan hunted small creatures and fixed old machines he found buried in snow. Ash practiced flying, his wings growing stronger with each attempt. Sometimes he managed to lift off for a few seconds before tumbling down into the snow. Rowan laughed every time, his heart feeling lighter. "You'll get there, Ash," he said, watching proudly. "You were born to rule the skies." The wyvern roared happily, a sound that echoed through the mountains. It was the sound of life, of hope. But hope came with danger. One evening, as Rowan sat sharpening his blade, Ash suddenly went still, his eyes narrowing. A strange pulse ran through the air, faint but familiar. Rowan felt it too, like warmth touching his skin. He looked outside and froze. The sky was glowing red, the same color he remembered from the night of the storm. Something huge was moving through the clouds. "No," he whispered. "Not again." The ground trembled as a deep roar rolled through the mountains. Far above, unseen through the mist, the Dragon Queen soared silently across the horizon. She had come alone this time, her heart heavy but her mind sharp. She followed the pulse of her child's magic, but something unexpected filled her senses. Human energy mixed with it, bound together like two threads woven into one. It was unnatural, impossible, yet it was real. Back in the cave, Rowan felt the wind shift. Ash whimpered softly, pressing close to him. Rowan put a hand on the wyvern's head. "Whatever happens," he said quietly, "we face it together." The mountain shook again, and in the red light of the setting sun, a massive shadow fell over the entrance of the cave. A voice echoed through the cold air, deep, calm, and sorrowful. "Human, step outside." Rowan froze. He knew that voice. He had heard it once before, in the whispers of fire and thunder. It was her, the Dragon Queen. The world seemed to stop as her golden eyes glowed through the mist. And for the first time since that stormy night, mother and child were about to face each other again. The air inside the cave grew heavy, thick with heat and power. The stones trembled under the weight of an ancient presence. Rowan stood frozen, his hand gripping the rifle though he knew it would do nothing. His heart pounded so hard it hurt. In front of the cave's mouth, through the thick mist and red sky, the Dragon Queen appeared. Wings spread wide, her scales glowing like molten gold, her eyes bright as twin suns. She was both beautiful and terrifying, the kind of creature that could end mountains with a breath. Ash stood beside Rowan, growling softly, his wings twitching in fear and confusion. He didn't know her, but something deep inside his blood recognized her. The queen took a slow step forward, her massive claws sinking into the frozen ground. When she spoke, her voice wasn't a roar. It was soft, almost broken. "You have what belongs to me." Rowan swallowed hard but didn't move. "He doesn't belong to anyone," he said, his voice shaking but steady. "He's not a thing to take back. He's my son." The queen's eyes narrowed. "Your son?" she repeated, her voice trembling between anger and disbelief. "You dare call the blood of dragons your own?" Rowan looked straight at her, his jaw tight. "He was dying when I found him. You left him there. I didn't. I stayed. I fed him, healed him, protected him. I raised him. So yes, he's my son." The Dragon Queen fell silent. For a long moment only the wind moved. Then, slowly, she lowered her head, her eyes flicking toward the wyvern. "Ash?" she whispered softly, the name rolling from her tongue like a lost memory. The young wyvern tilted his head, confused. His instincts told him this creature was familiar, her scent, her voice. Yet the bond he felt was with the man standing beside him, not her. He took a cautious step forward, wings half open, then turned back toward Rowan, seeking reassurance. Rowan nodded gently, whispering, "It's okay, kid. I'm right here." The queen's eyes softened, but only for a second. "You do not understand what you have done, human," she said quietly. "My kind do not bond with humans. It breaks the law of blood and magic. The world itself will fight this connection." Rowan shook his head. "Then the world will have to try harder," he said coldly. "Because I'm not giving him up." Thunder rolled through the mountains as if the world itself answered his defiance. The queen lifted her head, her wings spreading wide in anger and sorrow. "You are brave," she said, her voice trembling, "but foolish. You cannot protect him from what's coming. The prophecy will find him, and you." Her eyes flickered with something Rowan couldn't read, fear, maybe guilt. The bond between human and dragon cannot exist without cost. Rowan's hands clenched. "Then let the cost come to me," he said. "Not him." For the first time in her long life, the Dragon Queen hesitated. Her rage faded into silence. She looked at the man standing before her, small, scarred mortal, yet his courage burned brighter than the fire of her kind. She saw the way her child stood close to him, how their hearts beat in rhythm, how the magic around them twisted and merged as if the world itself was learning something new. A bond of choice, not blood. Why? She finally asked. Why would you risk your life for a creature that was never yours? Rowan smiled faintly, though his eyes were wet. Because he needed someone, and I was there. His voice softened. And maybe I needed him too. The Dragon Queen closed her eyes. The wind around her calmed, the fire in her scales dimming. For the first time, the mountain didn't tremble under her presence. It bowed to it. She looked down at the wyvern again, her expression torn between pride and pain. He is strong, she said softly. You have given him life I never could. But before Rowan could answer, the sky exploded with light. A crack of thunder tore through the clouds as a massive shape emerged. One of the Queen's generals, black-scaled and furious, followed by two more. My queen! The lead dragon roared. You cannot stand with a human. The prophecy forbids it. The queen turned sharply, her wings spreading. Leave now, she commanded. This is not your fight. But they did not listen. The largest dragon snarled. If you will not destroy the boy, then we will. The mountain shook again. Fire lit the sky. Rowan stepped in front of Ash without thinking, gun in hand, though it was useless. The queen looked between them, her child, the human, and the approaching flames. And in that single heartbeat, she made a choice that would change everything. She roared. A sound so powerful it shattered the clouds above. The shockwave hit the attacking dragons like a storm. You will not touch my blood, she screamed, fire bursting from her mouth like a river of gold. Rowan shielded his face as the world turned into light and fire. Ash cried out, wings flaring, as the air itself burned with energy. The queen fought like a goddess of wrath, defending her son and the human who had saved him. The sky turned crimson as dragon clashed against dragon, fire against flame, mother against her own kind. And as Rowan watched, one thought burned in his mind. Maybe the prophecy wasn't about destruction at all. Maybe it was about change. Maybe this was how it began. The mountains shook as if the gods themselves had awakened. Fire painted the night sky red and gold, and the roar of dragons echoed for miles. Rowan stood near the mouth of the cave, holding his rifle tightly even though he knew it was useless against creatures of fire and scale. Above him, the Dragon Queen battled her own generals, her golden flames lighting up the frozen peaks. Sparks rained down like falling stars as wings clashed and thunder rolled through the clouds. Ash cowered behind Rowan, eyes wide and body trembling. He was still too small, too young to fight creatures born for war. But his heart burned with fear for his mother, and for the man who had raised him. Rowan turned, crouching beside him. Listen to me, Ash, he said firmly. You stay here. You hear me? No matter what happens, you stay hidden. Ash shook his head, letting out a low growl. Rowan smiled faintly. Yeah, I know you don't listen well. Guess you got that from me. A blast of fire tore through the ground nearby, throwing Rowan backward. He hit the rocks hard, gasping as the air left his lungs. When he looked up, he saw the black-scaled general landing before him, eyes blazing like burning coals. Human, the creature hissed. You dare stand beside her? You corrupt our blood. It raised one massive claw, ready to crush him. Rowan rolled away just in time, grabbing a shard of glowing metal from the ground and swinging it upward. It struck the dragon's face, not deep enough to wound, but enough to make it snarl. High above, the Dragon Queen saw it, the human fighting her general, standing tall even when hopelessly outmatched. Something inside her stirred. For so long she had believed humans were weak, fragile, unworthy of the sky. But here was one man, defying death for her child. That kind of courage was rarer than gold. With a furious roar, she dived from the sky, striking the black dragon with a blast of golden fire that melted the rocks beneath them. The explosion shook the entire peak. Rowan stumbled to his feet, coughing through the smoke. "Remind me," he said between breaths. "Never to make her angry," Ash cried out from behind, and when Rowan turned, he saw the young wyvern stepping forward, his scales glowing faintly. The light around him pulsed with strange energy, the same golden magic that flowed through the queen herself. Ash opened his mouth and let out a roar, small but powerful, filled with something ancient. The magic flared outward, weaving through the battlefield like living light. The dragon queen froze mid-fight as she felt it, the bond between human and dragon pulsing stronger than ever. The prophecy, she realized, was never meant to destroy their world. It was meant to unite it. The golden flame wasn't a curse. It was evolution. Her eyes widened as she saw Rowan reach for Ash, the light surrounding them both, blending man and dragon essence together. The world around them seemed to slow, and for a heartbeat, everything, even fire, bowed before the connection they shared. But the other dragons didn't understand. The black-scaled general roared in fury, blinded by pride. "No!" he screamed. "This cannot be." He lunged at the queen with all his strength, claws slashing, tail whipping through the fire. The queen met his attack head-on, her flames burning hotter than ever. Rowan saw the two titans collide, light against shadow, gold against black. The sound was like thunder tearing the sky apart. He wanted to help, but what could a human do in a war of gods? He clenched his fists, heart pounding, and looked at Ash. "We can't just watch, kid," he said. "We finish what we started." He ran toward the battle, dodging falling debris, every step echoing with purpose. Ash followed, flying low beside him, his wings cutting through smoke. Together, they reached the battlefield's edge. Rowan aimed his rifle at the wounded dragons circling above, firing flare rounds to distract them. The bright flashes confused the beasts for a moment, long enough for the queen to strike again. She unleashed a final wave of fire so bright it turned the night into day. The black-scaled dragon screamed as golden flames engulfed him, his body falling into the abyss below. The others saw their leader fall and fled into the sky, their roars fading into the distance. The battle was over. Silence returned to the mountains. The wind whispered through the smoke, carrying the scent of ash and blood. The dragon queen landed heavily on the ground, her wings trembling. Rowan approached slowly, limping, his clothes torn and burned. Ash ran to her, chirping softly, pressing his head against her leg. The queen looked down at her child, then at the human who stood before her, the man who had fought beside her, not against her. "You fought like one of us," she said quietly. "You bled for what you love." Rowan smiled weakly. "Guess we're not that different after all." The queen's gaze softened. For the first time, her voice lost all command and pride. "Perhaps," she said, "the world was wrong. Perhaps the bond between dragon and human was never meant to bring ruin, but hope." She looked toward the horizon, where dawn was breaking. The age of fear must end, and maybe it begins with you too. Rowan turned to Ash, smiling faintly. "You hear that, kid? We might have just changed the world." The wyvern chirped proudly, his golden eyes glowing brighter than ever. The queen spread her wings, looking at them both one last time. "Protect him well, human," she said softly. "He carries the fire of two worlds now." As she rose into the sky, her wings cutting through the dawn, Rowan watched her disappear into the light. For the first time there was peace, fragile, beautiful peace. He looked down at Ash, who stared up at the sunrise. "Come on, kid," Rowan said with a grin. "Let's find out what kind of world we just made." The wind blew warm through the mountains, and for the first time in forever, it didn't smell of death or war. It smelled like hope. The sun rose slowly over the mountain peaks, painting the world in gold and crimson. Smoke still drifted across the valley, the last whispers of a war that had finally ended. Rowan stood at the cliff's edge, his hand resting on Ash's neck. The young wyvern had grown. His wings were stronger now, his eyes brighter than ever. For the first time, there was peace in his gaze. No fear, no pain, only calm. Below them, The world stretched wide and endless, rivers glinting like silver, forests shining with dew, and in the far distance, the ruins of old dragon temples, half buried in mist. Everything looked different now. The same world that once tried to kill them both now seemed full of promise. Rowan took a deep breath and smiled. "You feel that, kid? That's what freedom smells like." Ash let out a soft chirp and spread his wings, catching the morning breeze. He nudged Rowan gently, as if inviting him to ride. Rowan chuckled. "You sure you're strong enough for that?" The wyvern gave him a stubborn look, the same look he used to give as a tiny hatchling when he didn't want to eat his food. Rowan laughed and climbed onto his back. "All right then, show me what you've got." The wind rushed against his face as Ash lifted off the ground. Higher and higher they rose, until the mountains looked like mere shadows beneath them. Rowan's heart pounded, not from fear, but from pure, wild joy. For the first time, he wasn't grounded by loss or grief. He was flying, truly flying. Below, the villages that once feared dragons watched in silent awe. People pointed to the sky, whispering as they saw a man riding beside a golden wyvern. Old myths spoke of destruction when humans and dragons united, but what they saw now was the opposite: beauty, balance, and something sacred. Children ran outside, cheering as Ash roared gently above them, his wings casting great shadows over the land. Rowan looked down and saw faces filled with wonder instead of terror. The world was changing. The Queen's words echoed in his mind. "He carries the fire of two worlds now." Rowan finally understood. This was what destiny meant. Not a prophecy of doom, but a promise of unity. They flew beyond the mountains, toward the green valleys where new life was beginning to bloom. Ash glided low over the rivers, letting his claws brush the water, sending ripples of light across its surface. Rowan closed his eyes and listened to the sound: wind, water, and the steady rhythm of wings. It was peace, real peace. When they landed in a quiet meadow, Rowan dismounted and looked around. "This," he said softly, "this will be home." He built a small shelter near the river, while Ash gathered branches, dropping them clumsily beside him. Rowan laughed. "You're getting better at that. Maybe someday I'll even teach you how to cook." The wyvern snorted, puffing a tiny cloud of smoke that made Rowan cough. Okay, maybe not cooking," he said, smiling. Days turned into weeks. Rowan planted crops, fished from the stream, and trained with Ash every morning. The bond between them grew deeper, not master and beast, but father and son. Sometimes, when the stars lit up the sky, Rowan would talk to Ash about the old days. "You know," he said one night, gazing at the fire, "when I first found you, I thought you'd never make it. You were so small. I could hold you in my hands." He chuckled softly. "Now look at you. You're stronger than any dragon I've ever seen." Ash rested his head beside him, a low hum vibrating through his chest, the sound of trust. Rowan reached out and placed his hand on the wyvern's snout. "You changed me, kid. You made me believe that even in a world full of monsters and war, there's still something worth saving." He looked up at the stars, and his voice grew quiet. "If your mother can see us now, I think she'd be proud." The night breeze carried the smell of wildflowers and fresh rain. The world had healed, just a little, because one human chose compassion over fear. Because one creature, left to die, chose love over vengeance. As dawn broke again, Rowan saddled up and looked at Ash. "You ready for another flight?" The wyvern spread his wings wide, his scales glowing in the rising sun. Together, they soared into the sky once more. Two souls from different worlds, bound by something stronger than blood. High above the clouds, Rowan laughed freely. "Let them write their legends," he shouted over the wind. "Because this time, it's not about dragons or men. It's about us." The world below sparkled like gold, and the story of the man and the wyvern became a tale whispered in every corner of the realm. A story not of power, but of heart. And that, dear listeners, was the story of a man who raised a dragon, and in doing so healed two worlds. If you felt the bond between Rowan and Ash, if this story touched your heart, then remember, compassion is the strongest fire of all. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more heart-touching HFY stories like this one. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you found a dying wyvern hatchling? Until next time, stay human, stay kind, and keep the fire burning.